Chapter 5007. Since the distribution was complete, there was no need for the four of them to stand on ceremony. Among the 7 members of the Xueqi clan strangulation team, there was indeed a leader. The water god shadow was golden and emitted a bright light. Moreover, the water god shadow seemed to be the most powerful. Kong Xinmu sensed that the strength of the water god shadow had probably reached the level of a level 1 transcendent god. This was what he sensed, but in reality, the level of the water god shadow was only at the peak emperor level. In other words, the golden water god shadow was most likely a genius of the Xueqi clan. Kong Xinmu naturally did not feel any pity for a genius of the Xueqi clan. Since they had appeared on the opposite side, only death awaited them. Moreover, who knew how many geniuses of the dragon gods had been killed by the strangulation team in front of him? Kong Xinmu would definitely not hesitate to kill such an enemy. As the 7 water god phantoms drew closer, Jiang Xinwu discovered that there was actually a golden-haired girl beneath the leading water god phantoms. She looked rather pretty, but it was a pity that the golden-haired girl's eyes were filled with endless coldness and murderous intent. Kong Xinmu could even see the desire to kill in her eyes. Warm moon, don't hold back. The leader of the strangulation team is not weak. Kong Xinmu reminded Gu Xinyue. Although Gu Xinyue had reached the level of a level 1 transcendent god as a member of the dragon gods, the leader of the strangulation team had experienced many battles, especially battles of life and death. His experience was definitely much richer than Gu Xinyue's. It could be said that the 2 girls were geniuses with similar abilities. They had both reached the level of a level 1 transcendent god when they were at the peak emperor level. However, the other party's battle experience was obviously much richer than Gu Xinyue's. I'll be careful. Hearing Kong Xinmu's words, Gu Xinyue smiled and felt sweet in her heart. It meant that Kong Xinmu cared about her. However, she didn't have the time to savor this sweetness. She had to focus all her attention on dealing with the blonde girl from the Xueqi tribe. At this moment, the distance between the 2 of them was less than 100,000 feet. For the water god's projection, 100,000 feet was only a distance of 10 bodies. It was a distance that could be covered in an instant. However, just as the enemy was about to attack Kong Xinmu, Gu Xinyue and the other 3 made the first move. Cosmic runes. The boundless power of the starry sky inheritance suddenly flickered in this sea area. A terrifying power erupted at this moment. The light blue power of the starry sky inheritance condensed into a starry sky rune, which then combined into a starry sky martial skill. Of course, the first move came from Kong Xinmu's starry sky isolation. Now, Kong Xinmu could be said to have perfected this move. With one move, he directly divided the 7 opponents into 4 areas, completely isolating them from each other. This way, it would be convenient for Gu Xinyue and the others to choose their own opponents. When the void around the opponents was completely sealed and the void between each other was isolated, the 7 members of the strangulation team then realized that something was wrong. They had been surrounded and controlled. All this power seemed to have come from the black dragon martialist in front of them, who was also their target this time. However, they hadn't expected that before they could get close to the target and make the first move, the target would make the first move and trap them. Moreover, there seemed to be a very strong power exploding around them. Soon, the 7 of them finally saw Gu Xinyue and the other 3, who were continuously gathering power. After all, Gu Xinyue and the other 3 were only in human form. They looked very small and insignificant, like specks of dust that would not be noticed. Therefore, the 7 members of the strangulation team finally discovered their existence when their power was almost condensed. The first to notice Gu Xinyue was the blonde leader of the strangulation team. When the blonde girl saw Gu Xinyue, she was stunned at first, then she licked her lips, obviously wanting to kill her. She could see that Gu Xinyue was only a level 9 emperor-level dragon martialist, which was also a peak emperor-level dragon martialist. This level was the same as her own inherited level. However, she was a super experienced killer who was famous in the Xueqi tribe. This time, she had participated in this operation only to gain some experience. In her opinion, being responsible for strangling some peak dragon emperors was not difficult at all. Even if she was asked to lead a team to kill a level 1 supreme god dragon martialist, she was confident that she could do it. Therefore, when she saw Gu Xinyue, who was about the same age as her, she really did not pay much attention to her. However, immediately after, she saw an unbelievable scene. Starry universe runes bloomed around her water god shadow, and light blue light danced in the sea. She saw that her 6 teammates were all killed at this moment. Almost in an instant, 6 of her teammates were killed. Each of them was shredded into countless pieces by the light blue runes of the Starry Sky's inheritance. Suddenly, the blonde girl came to her senses. She realized that she had seen an illusion and not reality. She immediately looked around and found that her 6 teammates were indeed still there. The girl in front of her, Xueqi, was currently shining with light blue starry light. She had already set up a glittering starry array around her golden water god shadow. I was suddenly hit by an illusion. The blonde girl felt extremely incredulous. One had to know that she had resistance to illusions, and her resistance was very strong. If it was just an ordinary illusion, it would not be able to attract her attention at all. However, this time, she realized that she had fallen into a trap. During the time that she had fallen into the illusion, Xueqi had actually set up an extremely powerful starry universe inheritance rune. There were a total of 18 star nodes surrounding the golden-haired girl. Together, these 18 star nodes formed a starry sky array with terrifying lethality. When Kong Xinmu saw this scene, he was a little surprised. This was because he would usually not use this method. Although the starry universe inheritance rune was extremely powerful, it was extremely difficult to use it in battle. After all, it required a relatively long preparation time before it could really be used. But now, Xueqi had completed her preparation. Chapter 5008. Xueqi's talent was the Nightmare Illusory Dragon, which was an innate divine dragon with strong illusion abilities. In fact, this was not enough for her to affect the blonde girl. The most important thing was that she had absorbed the enchanting astral crystal that Kong Xinmu had given her, and had completely understood the power of the enchanting astral crystal and transformed it into her own power. After absorbing the power of the enchanting astral crystal, Xueqi's illusion ability could be enhanced several times. For the Nightmare Illusory Dragon, it was like a divine artifact. This kind of thing could not be bought on the market at all, and it was only by chance that Kong Xinmu and the others could obtain it in a mid-level relic. Hence, the current Xueqi's ability was extremely strong. The Nightmare Illusory Dragon's ability was activated, and the blonde girl fell into an illusion directly. Although she woke up after a while, the blonde girl was already surrounded by the star formation at this moment. And Xueqi's formation was about to be activated. Just before her formation was activated, the golden-haired girl saw a scene similar to the one she had just seen in the illusion. Her 6 team members at this moment were basically 2 people besieging a dragon warrior. Or rather, it was not a dragon martial artist, but 3 humans who were displaying the wonderful power of inheritance. The 3 humans' every move had the radiance of the stars shining, and every time the radiance of the stars shone, it actually contained power equivalent to a supreme god-level power. When several different celestial runes fused together, it would transform into a specific super-powerful starry sky martial technique. With such power, even though it was 1 against 2, she didn't feel any pressure when facing her team members. Almost not long after the blonde girl woke up from the illusion, she saw a scene similar to the illusion. That was, her 6 team members were actually killed by the 3 humans at this moment. 1 against 2, yet her team members were unable to retaliate at all. One by one, the 6 water god phantoms were condensed by some kind of light blue starry sky power. Then they exploded and shattered into pieces. What kind of power is this? The blonde girl naturally hadn't seen the power of the starry sky inheritance. Her face was full of surprise, but now was not the time for her to be surprised. At that moment, Xueqi's super-powerful array formation was activated. The light of the stars shone in an instant. The 18 star nodes all erupted at this moment, and the boundless power of the star nodes completely enveloped the golden-haired girl's golden water god phantom. Not even a trace of gold could be seen, and it was completely submerged by the star nodes. Almost all the existences in the surroundings stared fixedly at this scene. This even included Chen Chong, Wei Xiaoning, and Chu Yueqiang. The 3 of them were about the same progress as Xueqi. They had cultivated the power of the galaxy inheritance and had reached the first level of the supreme god level. They had also come out of the Temple of Trials at about the same time. But Xueqi had displayed this star absolute kill array. The 3 of them didn't even consider learning this spirit array. Although it was powerful, it would take a long time to prepare. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to use it. Moreover, it would be used indiscriminately to kill enemies and allies. But Gu Xinyue happened to be very suitable to cultivate this kind of method. Because Gu Xinyue had the ability of the nightmare illusory dragon, she could drag the opponent into an illusion and delay time. And with the delay time, Gu Xinyue could prepare the 18 star nodes of the Star Absolute Kill Array. This was undoubtedly a starry sky martial technique tailor-made for her. The innate ability of the dragon gods and the power of the starry sky inheritance can work together in this way? Even Jiang Shenwu looked a little surprised, almost gasping in amazement. He had never thought that the battle would develop in this direction, but Gu Xinyue was able to use the power of the starry sky inheritance flexibly. For Kong Shinmu, he was happy for her from the bottom of his heart. He hoped that she could continue on her path and become stronger. Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning were now a little jealous. They thought about it. If their demon god race's inheritance was still around, they might be able to find a way to work with the power of the starry sky inheritance. Unfortunately, they had destroyed the demon god race's inheritance. It was useless to think about it now. Fortunately, their supreme god-level power of the starry sky inheritance was definitely not weak. Just now, it had killed 2 peak emperor-level experts of the talisman aqua race. Such combat power was definitely beyond their expectations. They could even feel that this strength surpassed the demon god race's inheritance of the same level. In other words, if they were both at the first level of the supreme god race, the demon god race's inheritance would not be able to beat the power of the starry sky inheritance. It was the same for other inheritances. After all, this was the power most suitable for the human race, the power of nature. To Kong Shinmu, the 4 of them had mastered their powers very well. Among them, Gu Xinyue surprised him the most. However, just as Kong Shinmu was feeling satisfied, a dazzling golden light erupted from the center of the starry sky array formation that Gu Xinyue had activated. The appearance of this golden light shattered the starry sky array formation. Terrifying golden waves even rolled over and were about to drown Gu Xinyue. What's going on? Kong Shinmu's expression changed slightly as he suddenly thought of something. Since the golden-haired girl from the talisman aqua race was a genius, how could she not have some life-saving means on a battlefield like this? Almost at the same time that the golden waves rolled over, Kong Shinmu's black divine dragon body suddenly darted out. Void travel! Void travel! Void travel! Kong Shinmu rushed to Gu Xinyue's side as fast as he could, then activated the starry sky small world on his wrist and took Gu Xinyue into it. At the same time, Kong Shinmu directly displayed the starry sky kingdom. The golden wave was extremely powerful and even contained the aura of an unparalleled power. Therefore, it was not something that Kong Shinmu could resist at all. Therefore, Kong Shinmu could only display the starry sky kingdom and let himself hide in this alternate space. However, even the starry sky kingdom could not completely block the terrifying destructive power of the golden waves. Not long after Kong Shinmu hid in the starry sky kingdom, he discovered that the barrier of the starry sky kingdom had been smashed by the golden waves. Then, the golden waves directly drowned Kong Shinmu's divine dragon body. Great Compassion Sky Dragon Seal. Brilliant Rose Tone. Divine Seal Rose Tone. In an instant, Kong Shinmu directly activated his strongest defensive means and released his divine dragon tyrant body technique into a defensive stance. Chapter 5009. Read my new book, Greatest God of All Times. The giant golden wave rolled past. Kong Shinmu felt that his divine dragon body was being destroyed by the giant golden wave. The terrifying power destroyed the golden barrier of his brilliant gemstone. The golden barrier of his brilliant gemstone was a powerful technique that could withstand the attacks of a peak supreme god. Moreover, he had unleashed the power of the divine seal gemstone. The divine seal gemstone was a powerful gemstone that could increase the power of any gemstone by 5 times. Kong Shinmu had never used the power of the divine seal gemstone before, because he had never needed the power of the divine seal gemstone. Now, the divine seal gemstone had increased the defensive power of the brilliant gemstone's golden barrier by more than 5 times. It could even withstand an attack from an ordinary supreme god. However, all of this could not stop the giant golden wave. This was an extremely powerful supreme god power. Kong Shinmu could not withstand it at all. Fortunately, with the existence of the brilliant gemstone and the divine seal gemstone, the Great Compassion Heavenly Dragon Seal had blocked most of the destructive power of the giant golden wave. When the defensive barrier of the Great Compassion Heavenly Dragon Seal was shattered, the giant golden wave that Kong Shinmu had withstood was not as strong as before. The appearance of the giant golden wave caused Kong Shinmu's black dragon body to roll backward and be blasted tens of thousands of feet away. Kong Shinmu's black divine dragon body was battered by the giant golden wave. Fortunately, the intensity of Kong Shinmu's devouring power was extremely terrifying. He had released the devouring power earlier and simply devoured some of the power in the surrounding ocean to recover quickly. Gu Xinyue was protected by Kong Shinmu in the small universe. As for Chen Chong, Wei Xiaoning, and Chu Yueqiang, they each had their own special abilities. They were originally protected by Kong Shinmu's Starry Sky Isolation. When the giant golden wave erupted, they immediately used their techniques to escape. Unlike Kong Shinmu had to rescue Gu Xinyue. As for the three of them, they had time to escape. After Kong Shinmu's Starry Sky Isolation blocked them for a moment, they had already flown hundreds of thousands of feet away. The golden waves did not spread that far. Therefore, the three of them were safer. In the center of the golden wave, Kong Shinmu looked back and saw that the golden-haired girl was not killed by the power of the star formation, but she seemed to be a little dizzy from the tremor. On her neck was a golden water ripple pendant. The power of that golden water ripple pendant seemed to have been drained. That pendant must be the thing that triggered the golden wave just now, right? Seeing this, Kong Shinmu did not hesitate at all and directly flew forward. Although his black dragon body hadn't fully recovered and was still drenched in blood, his consciousness was very clear and he knew what he was doing. He directly shuttled in front of the golden-haired girl, and then with lightning speed, he attached the devouring power to his dragon claws and pierced through the golden water goddess shadow. Immediately after, Kong Shinmu's dragon claws grabbed the golden-haired girl's body. Although the star formation that Gu Xinyue had activated earlier did not kill her, it had blasted her golden water goddess shadow extremely weak. Kong Shinmu directly pierced through it as if it had no protection. Under normal circumstances, when that huge golden wave erupted, how could anyone in the surroundings survive? However, Kong Shinmu and Chu Yueqiang were completely different. Because of the power of the star inheritance, they were too sensitive to space. Even if they could not withstand it, they could escape. Moreover, Kong Shinmu had prepared the starry sky isolation in advance. Therefore, the golden wave's eruption this time could not protect the golden-haired girl. Kong Shinmu's dragon claws pierced through the water goddess shadow, directly grabbed the golden water ripple pendant in front of her neck, and then pulled it off. Although he did not know what it was, it must be something good. Immediately after, Kong Shinmu used the power of the star inheritance to condense several golden star runes. These star runes formed a series of star chains, directly entangling the golden-haired girl's body. Kong Shinmu smashed the water goddess shadow, which was equivalent to capturing the golden-haired girl. The golden-haired girl was still a little confused. From her point of view, everything had happened too quickly. Originally, she and her teammates came to kill a black dragon warrior, but before they arrived, they were isolated by the void blockade, and then they were attacked by a few humans. These humans had not even used any of the Dragon God clan's inherited skills. Immediately after that, her teammates were all killed, and she fell into the illusion, giving the opponent an opportunity, causing her to fall into a trap. At the critical moment, just when the opponent exploded the power of the star formation, wanting to kill her, her life-saving pendant finally activated. A wave of golden waves appeared, and then the whole world became quiet. Unfortunately, the golden waves had a rather serious recoil, causing her to be a little delirious for a moment. When she regained consciousness, she found that she had actually fallen into the enemy's hands. He had been captured. The golden-haired girl opened her eyes and found that she was being held by the dragon claws. Immediately, she struggled with all her might. Unfortunately, her body was entangled by the star chains, which could seal all the meridians and acupoints in her body, so that she could not use any power that belonged to the Water Talisman clan. It should be known that the inheritance of the star inheritance was originally the inheritance of the power of nature, which was the most suitable power for human cultivation. The star chains condensed by the power of the star inheritance had a very clear understanding of the source of power in the human body, so the existence that was chained by the star chains could not use any power in the body at all. In other words, this golden-haired girl was now Kong Shinmu's captive. Be good and listen to me, or you'll suffer. Kong Shinmu's intuition told him that this golden-haired girl was an important person, and it was more useful to capture her than to kill her. What despicable means did you use? The golden-haired girl looked very unconvinced, and angrily struggled in Kong Shinmu's dragon claws. Our means are not despicable, It's just that you have not seen it before. Kong Shinmu said indifferently, simply too lazy to explain to her, and directly threw her into the star small world. Of course, she was not qualified to cultivate the power of the star inheritance, but Kong Shinmu could imprison her in a secret room in the star small world. In that secret room, she could not do anything, and instead, the power of the stars in the secret room would strengthen the star chains on her body, making it even more difficult for her to escape. After throwing her in, Kong Shinmu could not be bothered with her for the time being. Chapter 50-10. In this battle, Kong Shinmu and the rest had easily annihilated the Talisman Aqua Tribe strangulation team. They had even captured a team leader, the golden-haired girl. They still did not know the identity of the golden-haired girl. However, since she had a supreme treasure protecting her, she should have a rather special identity. If they captured her, she might come in handy at a critical moment. Then, Kong Shinmu explained his plan to everyone. As Kong Shinmu needed to kill the third-stage superior god deputy general of the Talisman Aqua Tribe, his first plan was to find the deputy general. As for where the deputy general was now, Kong Shinmu could not be sure. The entire undersea canyon was too big. As far as the eye could see, there were scenes of the fierce battle between the dragon gods and the Talisman Aqua Tribe. The surging blood completely affected Kong Shinmu's perception. It could be said that as long as the third-stage superior god deputy general of the Talisman Aqua Tribe did not use his full strength, Kong Shinmu would not be able to sense him. Therefore, Kong Shinmu felt that he might not be able to find the deputy general by himself. Fortunately, Kong Shinmu now had Gu Xinyue and the other 3 helpers, and it could be said that they were free helpers. After Kong Shinmu explained his plan, he let the 4 of them split up to search. All 5 of them had cultivated the power of the Starry Sky inheritance and had the ability to sense the Starry Sky world. To be more specific, within a certain range, they could sense Kong Shinmu's location. Moreover, they could also use some methods of the power of the Starry Sky inheritance to communicate over long distances. The power of the Starry Sky inheritance was originally a void power that belonged to the spatial attribute. In terms of space travel, it had a unique advantage. Transmitting some words was not a big deal at all. Therefore, as long as any party discovered something, they could inform the others to come immediately. After the others received the news, it did not take too long for them to arrive at the scene. Basically, they could arrive after a few space jumps. Although the underwater canyon was vast, for Kong Shinmu and the others, after cultivating the power of the Starry Sky inheritance, they could come and go as they pleased. Thus, it was decided that the 4 of them would split up to help Kong Shinmu look for the Fu Shui clan's deputy general on the 3rd level of the Transcendent God realm. After that, they would inform the others to come. Moreover, when the time came, Kong Shinmu would be the leader, and the other 4 would be his assistants. They would join forces to kill the Fu Shui tribe's deputy general. This could be considered their own needs. They had just broken through to the 1st level of the Transcendent God and wanted to familiarize themselves with the power of the galaxy inheritance and the galaxy runes. Then, they would return to the small galaxy world to cultivate and try to break through to the 2nd level of the Transcendent God. Now that Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning had put all their energy into the Starry Sky inheritance, their progress was naturally rapid. As for Gu Xinyue and Chu Yueqiang, their talent was obvious. Moreover, at this stage, their cultivation in the Dragon God clan had reached the peak of the Dragon Emperor. At present, they had no intention of advancing further. Mainly, these 2 women had a different feeling for Kong Shinmu. Since Kong Shinmu's cultivation in the Dragon God clan had not broken through to the Transcendent God realm, they did not want to break through. When Kong Shinmu broke through, it would not be too late for them to break through. Anyway, to them now, breaking through to the Transcendent God realm of the Dragon God clan was not too difficult. The compatibility of the 2 women's divine dragon blood could easily cultivate to the Transcendent God realm. However, Kong Shinmu had not told them that he could help them break through the bottleneck easily. Anyway, they had not encountered a bottleneck yet. He would talk about it when the time came. Just like that, the 5 of them split up on the battlefield. And the news that the 5 of them had just worked together to kill the Fu Shui clan strangulation team did not spread too far. Because when Kong Shinmu and the others attacked, they had lured the other party to a relatively remote corner. In this way, Kong Shinmu and the other 4 were like fish in water, constantly searching in this underwater canyon battlefield. They even killed some Fu Shui clan squads along the way. For Gu Xinyue, Chu Yueqiang, Chen Chong, and Wei Xiaoning, it was indisputable that the Fu Shui clan was their enemy. Of course, Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning might not have a good impression of the soldiers of the Dragon God clan. But now that they were following Kong Shinmu to cultivate the Starry Sky inheritance, they would stand on Kong Shinmu's side for the time being. For them, there was no loss. After killing the members of the Fu Shui clan squads, they directly looted their belongings. This was also a request from Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu needed as many achievement points as he had now, so he had to do everything possible to obtain the cultivation resources he could get. These could all be exchanged for achievement points. Maybe if he accumulated all of them, he could exchange for a portion of Dubhe Stone liquid. So, Kong Shinmu was not fighting alone now. And the conditions that Kong Shinmu gave were some things of the Starry Sky inheritance. In the Starry Sky small world, there were some places that no one could enter without Kong Shinmu's permission. And many of the cultivation resources of the Starry Sky inheritance, Kong Shinmu could also provide them with some. This formed an equivalent exchange. Anyway, it was impossible for Kong Shinmu to exchange the cultivation resources of the Starry Sky inheritance for achievement points and the cultivation resources of the Dragon God clan. Moreover, Kong Shinmu could not provide Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning with cultivation resources for free. Could he? Who knew if these two fellows would stand on the same side as Kong Shinmu in the future? So, the necessary exchange of interests was still necessary. Under the stimulation of such conditions, Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning worked very hard. They galloped on the battlefield in the form of humans, killing in the undersea canyon battlefield. Many teams of the Talisman Water Clan did not even notice such a threat, and then they exploded and killed them all. The power of the Starry Sky inheritance was the power of nature. It did not need any ancient form to kill these emperor-level existences easily. This was why they were so terrifying. In this undersea canyon battlefield, no one understood the power of the Starry Sky inheritance at all. But as they continued to kill, the news inevitably spread. The Talisman Water Clan had already received news that a few mysterious experts in human form were slaughtering the soldiers of the Talisman Water Clan. And this made the experts of the Talisman Water Clan on the battlefield tense up. Chapter 50:11. What Kong Shinmu and the others didn't know was that not long after they split up, the Fu Shui tribe had already made a response. The Fu Shui tribe originally had at least 10,000 experts fighting fiercely with the dragon gods in this underwater canyon. But soon, as the Fu Shui tribe responded, the experts of the Fu Shui tribe all retreated in groups. Obviously, in such a chaotic situation, if they continued to fight the dragon gods, they would probably suffer a great loss at the hands of Kong Shinmu and the others. And now the Fu Shui tribe knew very well that the killing team that had come to encircle a dragon god expert had disappeared. Even the important girl leading the team was missing. It had to be said that the Fu Shui tribe realized that they were in trouble. The entire Fu Shui tribe army had started to move. They were retreating to the rear, and in the process of retreating, they gathered together. This situation was naturally discovered by the Legion of the Dragon God clan. Since the enemy wanted to retreat, what could they do? Beat them when they were down, of course. This was basically the situation. The Fu Shui tribe army kept retreating, and the dragon gods were chasing them from behind. As the two sides ran, it seemed that the Fu Shui tribe was about to be defeated. But the quality of this Fu Shui tribe army was quite high. While retreating, some of the small teams at the back were very strong, resisting the pursuit of the Dragon Martial Artist Legion. In this way, the Fu Shui tribe army didn't suffer many losses when they retreated. When this happened, it was Kong Shinmu and the others who were dumbfounded. Originally, they had an advantage in such a chaotic battlefield by splitting up. But now that the enemy was retreating, they had formed a battle formation. If Jiang Shenwu and the others went up to provoke them alone, they would most likely be defeated by the other party's combined forces. Although these water talisman races cultivators were all Emperor stage, and the majority were even King stage, when tens or hundreds of them joined forces and formed a formation, their strength was still extremely strong. It was not something that Jiang Shenwu and the others could deal with alone. Otherwise, against this Fu Shui tribe army, wouldn't a supreme-level expert be able to destroy them all? Actually, it was impossible. The overall strength of the army was there for all to see. Even if they were to face a supreme powerhouse, they would definitely be able to put up a fight if they gathered together. Therefore, when the entire army was gathered, Kong Shinmu and the others basically didn't have much of a chance to hunt. However, in just a short period of time, Kong Shinmu and the other four had gained quite a lot. The five of them split up. Each of them had killed at least 2 Talisman Water Clan troops. In total, the 5 of them had killed more than 100 Talisman Water Clan troops. This harvest could be said to be shocking. The items on the bodies of 100 King and Emperor level Talisman aquatic race experts added up would be worth at least 10 to 20,000 gold dragon coins, and this was already a low estimate. On average, the items they had on them were worth at least 50 to 60,000 gold dragon coins. This way, Kong Shin-mu could be considered to have obtained a small portion of the Dubhe Stone Liquid's achievement points. Of course, it wasn't time to settle the score yet. This wasn't Kong Shin-mu's final goal. If Kong Shin-mu could kill the Supreme God Level 3 Talisman Water Clan Deputy General, the achievement points he obtained would be enough to exchange for an entire portion of the Dubhe Stone Liquid. This was Kong Shin-mu's true goal. The other rewards were just icing on the cake for Kong Shin-mu. The most important thing was to complete the final goal of this trip. Then the question was, how could Kong Shin-mu kill the Supreme God Level 3 Talisman Water Clan Deputy General? Previously, in the chaotic battle, it was still possible for him to take advantage of the situation and see if he could kill the other party by surprise. However, now that the other party's army was gathered together, it was like an iron bucket to Kong Shin-mu. It was difficult to break through. Even if he found the opponent's Supreme God Level 3 Talisman Water Clan Deputy General, it would be difficult for Kong Shin-mu to kill the other party with so many enemies surrounding him. There would definitely be other Talisman Water Clan experts around to help. This would definitely be a huge obstacle for Kong Shin-mu. Even with Gu Xinyue and the others, they might not be able to withstand it. After all, the other party's entire army was there. Under such circumstances, it was difficult for Kong Shin-mu to think of any practical and effective methods. Therefore, he was left with only one choice. As the Talisman Water Clan army retreated and gradually left the underwater canyon, the Dragon God's army didn't chase after them. After all, they were also afraid that the other party would set up some kind of trap. As the two armies separated at the underwater canyon, the Dragon God's army stayed in the underwater canyon. This underwater canyon was originally the place that the Dragon God's army was responsible for defending. As for the Talisman Water Clan army, they retreated from the underwater canyon and set up camp in a coral reef above the underwater canyon. What do we do now? Kong Shin-mu met up with the 4 of them. Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning were dumbfounded. They had a good time killing before, but the other party's reaction was too fast. They actually ordered the entire army to retreat. Actually, they should have expected this. In such a chaotic situation where the other party was constantly being killed, they would definitely retreat together. Kong Shin-mu narrowed his eyes and said, "There's only one way now. It's basically impossible to kill the opponent's Supreme God Level 3 Deputy General by force. But we have an important hostage in our hands. If we use the golden-haired girl from the strangulation team just now as a bet, we might be able to provoke the other party's deputy general to come out and fight me one-on-one." If it was one-on-one, Kong Shin-mu wasn't afraid of the other party at all. He was afraid that the golden-haired girl's status wasn't high enough to make the deputy general give up everything to fight Kong Shin-mu. No matter what, this was the only way that Kong Shin-mu could think of now. Since that was the case, there was nothing to hesitate about. Kong Shin-mu let the 4 of them return to the Starry Sky Inheritance space first. Then, he released the tied-up golden-haired girl from the Starry Sky Small World. "What's your name?" Kong Shin-mu asked the other party directly. The golden-haired girl had been locked up in the Starry Sky Small World for a while, and her mood had calmed down a lot. She also recognized the fact that she was now a captive of the Dragon Gods. However, she still didn't have a good impression of Kong Shin-mu. She was even very angry at what Kong Shin-mu had done. He had actually killed her team members. But she didn't think that they had come up to kill Kong Shin-mu. Did they not allow Kong Shin-mu to fight back? Chapter 50-12. The golden-haired girl's fierce appearance made Jiang Shenwu click his tongue in wonder. Did this girl know her current predicament? Kong Shin-mu could deal with her in any way he wanted. He did not need her consent at all. Now this blonde girl was his captive. But this blonde girl might have been spoiled since she was a child. Even now, she was still bossy around Kong Shin-mu. This attitude made Kong Shin-mu very unhappy. A captive should act like a captive. So Kong Shin-mu directly took action. With the power of the star rune, he condensed more chains and sealed her mouth. Originally, her whole body was bound by chains. Now, even her mouth was sealed. It could be said that she was quite miserable. The effect of Kong Shinmu's star rune was to seal any power in her body. Moreover, Kong Shinmu had inherited the power of the star rune at the second level of the Supreme God realm. It was easy for him to suppress a blonde girl at the peak of the Emperor realm. When the blonde girl's mouth was tied up by Kong Shinmu, the blonde girl was completely dumbfounded. What on earth did this boy of the dragon gods want to do? Then, Kong Shinmu took the tied blonde girl and flew directly to the coral reef outside the underwater canyon, which was quickly approaching the place where the Fu Shui Corps was stationed. Many dragon warriors of the Dragon God's Corps saw Kong Shinmu flying toward the coral reef. Now, the dragon warriors of the Dragon God's Corps also knew what had happened before. A small team of mysterious experts had taken advantage of the chaos on the battlefield to continuously kill the people of the Fu Shui Corps. In this short period of time, the Fu Shui Corps had lost at least 100 powerful warriors, including at least 10 high-level Emperor Realm experts. This was intolerable to the Fu Shui Corps. And the culprit who caused all this was said to be a mighty black dragon. Now, Kong Shinmu took the tied blonde girl and moved in the form of a black dragon. All of this fascinated the dragon warriors of the Dragon God clan. Now that the two armies were facing off against each other, the strongest experts of each army were naturally at the forefront of the armies. On the side of the dragon gods, there was a divine dragon general at the level of Supreme God level 3. He and the two first-stage Transcendent God Dragon martial artists were at the front of the army. They watched as Kong Shinmu left the army with the golden-haired lady and flew towards the base of the Fu Shui race army. General, should we stop him? The golden-haired girl he captured seems to be an important figure of the Talisman Water Tribe. Could it be that he wants to release her? A dragon warrior asked hesitantly. No need. The Transcendent God level 3 general of the Dragon Gods shook his head and said, let's just watch the show. I'm afraid even we can't see through this kid's strength. The general looked at the back of Kong Shinmu flying away with a smile on his face. Obviously, this general had some understanding of Kong Shinmu. Perhaps when Kong Shinmu accepted the mission, the Torrent Fortress had told him that such a person was coming to the battlefield. Originally, he had some doubts. What would this kid do on the battlefield? Unexpectedly, not long after Kong Shinmu arrived, he had already caused heavy losses to the enemy, and even captured an important figure of the enemy army. That golden-haired girl was obviously not an ordinary person. She might even be from the royal family of the Fu Shui race. The general had felt the unparalleled impact from before from afar. To have such a level of protection, there was no need to say more about the status of this golden-haired girl. Very quickly, under the gaze of all the dragon warriors of the Dragon God's army, Kong Shinmu flew to the coral reef where the Fu Shui race army was stationed. In his dragon claws was the golden-haired girl, who was tied up by the star rune chains. Then, from tens of thousands of feet away, he shouted in the direction of the Fu Shui race army, "Ask your general to come out and fight with me. If you can defeat me, you can bring this girl back." Kong Shinmu believed that the status of this golden-haired girl would definitely make the Fu Shui race very nervous. This was because he had only brought the golden-haired girl to a place not far from the coral reef when a commotion broke out from the water race's army. Clearly, the other side was also very shocked that the golden-haired girl had actually been captured by Jiang Shenwu. "You actually..." A thunderous roar came from the direction of the Fu Shui race army. However, as if he had thought of something, he swallowed his words and said, "Hurry up and release her. I don't know who she is." Of course, it was impossible for Kong Shinmu to release the golden-haired girl. He just said calmly, "But only if your general comes out to fight can we bring her back safely. If your general doesn't come out alone, I will kill her immediately." As soon as he finished speaking, there was another commotion from the Fu Shui race army. Kong Shinmu could feel that the golden-haired girl's identity was definitely not ordinary. Unfortunately, the other party's general was also very sharp and did not directly reveal her identity. However, it was a pity that Kong Shinmu's senses were too sharp. Even though they were separated by tens of thousands of feet, Kong Shinmu could still vaguely hear that there were some army warriors whispering to each other on the side of the Fu Shui race army. Kong Shinmu heard the word princess repeatedly. In other words, this golden-haired girl was actually the princess of the Fu Shui race? This time, Kong Shinmu was really shocked. The princess of the Fu Shui race had actually appeared on this battlefield and personally led the army into battle. It could be seen how strong the Fu Shui race was. However, since the princess of the Fu Shui race had been captured by him, Kong Shinmu could not let her go so easily. Using her to lure the other party's general out and kill him was only the first step. Next, he could even use the princess of the Fu Shui race to do even more things. It was even possible to turn the entire situation around. You're still a princess? I couldn't tell. No wonder you're so unruly and willful at such a young age. Kong Shinmu said calmly to the golden-haired girl who was bound in the dragon's claw. The golden-haired girl could not speak now. She could only raise her head and look at Kong Shinmu's dragon eyes with anger and humiliation. Your individual strength is really nothing much. Now that you've fallen into my hands, your identity is the only thing that can be of some use. Kong Shinmu spared no effort in attacking this princess of the Fu Shui race. Chapter 50-13. Of course, no matter how strong the golden-haired girl was, she was as helpless as a kitten in Kong Shinmu's hands. Now, the golden-haired girl could only listen to Kong Shinmu's arrangements. It was impossible for her to do anything on her own. Her power of inheritance from the Fu Shui clan had been sealed by Kong Shinmu and could not be used. Moreover, the golden water ripple pendant on her neck had been taken away by Kong Shinmu. She had no other means of defense. In fact, if she had other trump cards, she would have used them long ago. It could be seen that she was the very intense type. From this point of view, she was definitely not that good at forbearance. It could even be said that she had no forbearance at all. According to her identity as a princess, it was even more impossible for her to forbear. Therefore, Kong Shinmu could determine that the golden-haired girl had no power to resist now. Kong Shinmu grabbed the golden-haired girl with his dragon claws and used the power of inheritance from the starry sky to condense star runes to control the golden-haired girl. At the same time, he once again spoke to the coral reef of the Fu Shui clan. Your deputy general should have come out by now, right? Do you think that the deputy general of the Fu Shui clan is afraid of a small peak emperor-level dragon warrior like me? If he was a mere dragon martial artist, would the other dragon martial artists still be alive? Many dragon warriors of the Dragon God clan looked like they were in tears when they heard this. Kong Shinmu's words were really hurtful. At least in the entire Dragon God clan, there was probably no one who had the same strength as Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu dared to challenge the deputy general of the other army, which showed his courage. No matter what, in the Dragon God clan army, no one could compare to Kong Shinmu. Of course, Kong Shinmu did look like a small dragon warrior in front of the deputy general. After all, the difference between the emperor level and the supreme god level was too big. Under normal circumstances, Kong Shinmu might not even be able to take one move from his opponent. But the Fu Shui tribe didn't think so. The Fu Shui tribe knew how powerful the golden-haired girl, who was their princess, was. Even if she wasn't powerful enough and had been defeated by Kong Shinmu, she should still have many of the imperial family's life-saving methods. However, the imperial family's life-saving methods seemed to have failed to harm this black dragon warrior. This made the Fu Shui tribe ponder. One should know that the princess life-saving trump card was at least a supreme technique, but it failed to kill Kong Shinmu. Didn't this mean that Kong Shinmu had a supreme technique? Regardless of the means, it was not something that the other party could afford to take the risk. However, just as Kong Shinmu had said, now that the golden-haired princess was in Kong Shinmu's hands, the deputy general of the Transcendent God Level 3 had no choice but to appear. Otherwise, if something happened to the princess, the deputy general would probably die. Therefore, when Kong Shinmu repeated it for the second time, a deputy general of the Fu Shui tribe army at the Transcendent God Level 3 finally flew out from the crowd. The water god phantom on the body of the deputy general of the Fu Shui tribe army was light green and had a wind attribute spirit. It was actually a combination of the power of wind and water. Although the water god phantom was huge, it was very light. Especially in this ocean, it seemed even more agile. He was the target of Kong Shinmu's trip to the Transcendent God Level 3, Deputy General Wind Spirit. Deputy General Wind Spirit's strength was not much weaker than the Deputy General Xueqi that Kong Shinmu had killed previously. In fact, he was even stronger. After all, Deputy General Wind Spirit was the expert in charge of the battle in the Torrent Fortress. He was not like Deputy General Xueqi, who only harassed the dragon gods from the side. Of course, this was also uncertain. Deputy General Xueqi might have an amazing past, and his combat power might be stronger than Deputy General Wind Spirit's. No matter what, now that Deputy General Wind Spirit had appeared, and Kong Shinmu was looking for him to fight one-on-one. Deputy General Wind Spirit, I'm looking for you. Kong Shinmu's divine dragon body said calmly. We'll fight one-on-one. No one is allowed to help. Otherwise, your princess will die immediately. After saying this, Kong Shinmu threw the golden-haired princess into the starry small world. Seeing the golden-haired princess disappear before his eyes, Deputy General Wind Spirit's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Thief! Where did you hide our princess? Naturally, she's in a place suitable for her. She's very safe. Kong Shinmu said calmly, as long as you can defeat me, you will naturally be able to see your princess again. Furthermore, she will be unharmed. She's very safe now. Of course, if you run away, I can't guarantee your princess's safety. Deputy General Wind Spirit felt that he had completely fallen into a passive position. He didn't call out the word princess earlier because he wanted to fish in troubled waters. However, he didn't expect Kong Shinmu's senses to be so sharp. He also didn't know if the princess had said it herself, but this dragon martial artist actually found out about the princess's identity. This undoubtedly made Deputy General Wind Spirit extremely angry, but he was also very helpless. After all, he had no other choice now. He had to be responsible for the princess's life. As for Kong Shinmu, he didn't feel that his actions were shameless. In short, he just wanted a fair chance to fight Deputy General Wind Spirit. Under the threat of Kong Shinmu using the princess's life, Deputy General Wind Spirit had no choice but to stand up and fight Kong Shinmu. Moreover, he didn't dare to play any tricks at all. If he made any moves that made Kong Shinmu unhappy, Kong Shinmu could kill the blonde princess at any time. In that case, all of Deputy General Wind Spirit's previous efforts would be in vain. Therefore, what Deputy General Wind Spirit was thinking about now was to first test Kong Shinmu's strength. In any case, the current situation was very disadvantageous to him. He could only do as Kong Shinmu said first. You want to challenge me? Come on then. Deputy General Wind Spirit said in a deep voice. However, can you promise me one thing? Regardless of victory or defeat, life or death, don't hurt the princess easily. When Kong Shinmu heard this, he immediately narrowed his eyes. This Deputy General Wind Spirit really knew how to put forward conditions. Unfortunately, Kong Shinmu naturally couldn't be bothered with him. You're not in the position to talk about conditions now. Kong Shinmu said indifferently. All right, our fair fight is about to begin. Take this. He directly erupted with the 9th stage ultimate Drake burst. Endless darkness attribute devouring power was activated. Under the effect of the phantom ghost tome, it directly exploded near the opponent's water god phantom and condensed into the 9th stage Drake burst. However, Deputy General Wind Spirit's specialty was that he was very agile. Seeing that Kong Shinmu had launched an attack, he directly used his mind and the water god phantom along with his body traversed through the void and appeared elsewhere. Chapter 50-14. Deputy General Feng Ling dodged Kong Shinmu's attack while estimating Kong Shinmu's strength. In his perception, Kong Shinmu's attack was almost at the peak of the Emperor stage, but who would show all their strength at once? Therefore, Deputy General Feng Ling was almost certain that Kong Shinmu's strength was far beyond what he had shown. He has reached the transcendent god level? Deputy General Feng Ling thought to himself. However, he felt that it was impossible for Kong Shinmu to defeat him, who was at the 3rd level of the transcendent god realm, with the strength of a peak emperor stage. There were geniuses at the peak emperor stage who could defeat the 1st level of the transcendent god realm, and even the 2nd level of the transcendent god realm. However, it was basically impossible for a peak emperor stage to defeat a 3rd level of the transcendent god realm. Of course, Deputy General Feng Ling still kept an eye out and constantly sensed if there were any strange energy fluctuations around him. Even the slightest abnormality in the void could arouse his greatest vigilance. Deputy General Feng Ling felt that Kong Shinmu would secretly bring some dragon gods over. If that was the case, he really had no chance of winning. However, it was obvious that Kong Shinmu did not intend to bring any dragon gods over. He just estimated the strength of Deputy General Feng Ling in front of him. Then, after some consideration, he released Gu Xinyue, Chu Yueqiang, Chen Chong, and Wei Xiaoning from the Starry Sky Pocket World. 4 people suddenly appeared beside Kong Shinmu. This stunned Deputy General Feng Ling originally. He thought that Kong Shinmu would bring a very strong dragon gods over, But why did four weak-looking guys appear? Deputy General Fengling could not sense the power of the Starry Sky inheritance of Gu Xinyue and the others, but he could feel their dragon god's inheritance. He sensed that Gu Xinyue and Chu Yueqiang were both at the peak of the Emperor stage, which was the same level as Kong Xinmu. As for Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning, they didn't seem to have any cultivation at all. This made Deputy General Wind's spirit extremely puzzled. Moreover, the four people in front of him did not seem to have any intention of transforming into their divine dragon forms. Why did they look so confused? As a matter of fact, Gu Xinyue and the others were not dumbfounded. Instead, they were secretly communicating with the power of the Starry Sky inheritance. In a very short period of time, the four of them had already decided on how to fight. First was Gu Xinyue's Dream Force. However, because Gu Xinyue's dragon god cultivation was much lower than the other parties, the effect couldn't be too good. Of course, Gu Xinyue had absorbed the power of the illusionary star crystal. After all, the strength of her dreamland illusionary power was still very terrifying. Deputy General Fengling's willpower could not be weak. However, even so, when Gu Xinyue transformed into the body of the nightmare illusory dragon and directly unleashed her talent, Deputy General Fengling was still somewhat immersed in the dream. No one knew what Deputy General Fengling's dream was, but in short, he reacted in a flash. However, when he reacted, the star runes of Chu Yueqiang, Chen Chong, and Wei Xiaoning had all condensed successfully. Attack! The star runes of the three people condensed and then erupted with terrifying power. From the beginning, Kong Xinmu had not said that he wanted to fight Deputy General Fengling one-on-one. However, the four people he had called out did not seem very strong, so Deputy General Fengling did not care. Moreover, even if he wanted to care, he could not do anything about it. After all, the golden-haired princess was still in Kong Xinmu's hands. Although he did not know where Kong Xinmu had hidden the golden-haired princess, as long as the princess was still in Kong Xinmu's hands, Deputy General Fengling had no right to bargain. In the face of any situation, he could only endure. Moreover, Deputy General Fengling felt that the situation he was facing was still within his control. When he woke up from the dream, the surrounding star runes had completely condensed and formed. 3 consecutive starry sky attacks swept towards him, enveloping the entire space he was in. Deputy General Wind's spirit subconsciously wanted to dodge, but he soon discovered that the space around him had been sealed. He couldn't even use his spatial attribute Void Force. This made Deputy General Fengling's expression change drastically. He raised his head and looked at Kong Xinmu. Indeed, around Kong Xinmu's black dragon body, some light blue star runes flew up. There were crystal runes, gold runes, and many silver runes. All of them fused together to form a Starry Sky legacy move that isolated the Starry Sky. Under Kong Xinmu's Starry Sky isolation, Deputy General Fengling could not use his space attribute Void power. This made Deputy General Fengling feel as if he had seen a ghost. What kind of shocking move was this? He knew very well that this meant that Kong Xinmu's understanding of space attribute Void power had far exceeded Kong Xinmu's current level. It had reached the level of Transcendent God level 3, or even higher. Otherwise, Deputy General Fengling would not have been unable to break through the Starry Sky isolation. Under such circumstances, Deputy General Fengling could only explode with his own strength to defend himself. His water god shadow exploded with a whirlwind, sweeping up the surrounding seawater and forming layers of seawater barriers. The defensive ability of this barrier was naturally extremely strong. In Deputy General Fengling's opinion, there was no need for him to use his Transcendent God combat weapon. After all, he was only facing a few small fry. Although these small fry's abilities were a little strange and they seemed to control a very strong space attribute inheritance power, their strength was still there. At most, they were at Transcendent God level 1. Except for the Black Dragon, Deputy General Fengling still focused all his attention on Kong Xinmu. Therefore, he directly condensed a seawater barrier to block Chu Yueqiang, Chen Chong, and Wei Xiaoning's attacks. He felt that it should be enough. After all, he was a Transcendent God level 3 expert. Reality proved that his seawater barrier had no problem blocking the joint attack of the 3 of them. However, the 3 of them were using the Starry Sky decomposition technique. Under the Starry Sky decomposition technique, the seawater barrier defense of Deputy General Wind's spirit was disintegrated layer by layer. Soon, it was completely broken. Of course, The three of them were also exhausted by this time and basically had no strength left to continue. Right at this moment, Gu Xinyue attacked again. Previously, when she was dealing with the golden-haired princess, she had relied on her own strength to display the starry sky formation she had learned. At this moment, the starry sky killing formation was activated again. Chapter 50-15. New Book, Number 1 God of All Times. Previously, when dealing with the golden-haired girl, Gu Xinyue had relied on the influence of her dream to unleash the starry sky killing formation. After all, the golden-haired girl was only at the peak emperor level. Gu Xinyue's dream power had a considerable influence on her. Now, there was a limit to how long Gu Xinyue's dream power could affect Deputy General Fengling. Hence, he had to rely on the other three to cooperate. The four of them worked together successfully for the first time. Firstly, the starry sky decomposition technique of the other three posed a threat to Deputy General Fengling. It was just that the threat was not that great. Hence, it still attracted Deputy General Fengling's attention. Then, he ignored Gu Xinyue's starry sky killing formation. When Gu Xinyue's starry sky killing formation was unleashed, Deputy General Fengling did not expect such a terrifying attack to be unleashed from Gu Xinyue's hands. After all, even if Gu Xinyue had inherited the power of the starry sky, she was only at the level of a first-stage transcendent god. However, the power of the starry sky killing formation was definitely at the level of a third-stage transcendent god. As such, it would not be easy for Deputy General Wind Spirit to block the attack. When the starry sky killing formation was activated, its power level far exceeded Deputy General Fengling's imagination. He immediately activated his transcendent god combat weapon. A hurricane and tornado erupted from the water god projection and swept towards the surroundings. This was the strongest defensive technique that Deputy General Fengling could use in a hurry. Countless hurricanes and tornadoes spread out from the water god's phantom. On the periphery, there were countless rays of starlight that erupted from the 18 star nodes. They condensed into streaks of saber light killing formations that attacked Deputy General Wind Spirit like a rain of arrows. The power of both sides exploded in the void. Deputy General Fengling was extremely powerful. However, now that he had underestimated his opponent, it was difficult for him to completely block Gu Xinyue's starry sky killing formation. At this moment, the star force killing formation exploded and tore his hurricanes and tornadoes into pieces. After all, this wasn't Deputy General Fengling's strongest power. It was normal for his defense to be broken by Gu Xinyue's well-prepared starry sky killing array. It should be known that Gu Xinyue was a first-stage transcendent god of the Galaxy Legacy. Normally, a transcendent god of the Galaxy Legacy could skip a level and fight against a second-stage transcendent god. Now, Gu Xinyue was using a starry sky killing formation. This method was beyond the norm and required time to set up. However, its power was also a level higher than her own. Therefore, Gu Xinyue was not surprised that Deputy General Wind Spirit's defense was broken. On the other hand, the water god phantom of Deputy General Wind Spirit seemed to be quite tough. Following which, the remaining power of the starry sky killing formation poured onto the water god projection. However, it was not able to completely destroy it. It only caused a few more scars to appear on the water god projection. These wounds were not fatal to Deputy General Wind Spirit. Starry Sky Transcendent God Weapon. At this moment, Chu Yueqiang and the rest finally decided to use their full strength. When a transcendent god used a transcendent god weapon, their strength was beyond imagination. Moreover, Deputy General Wind Spirit was much stronger than a third-stage transcendent god. If they did not use their full strength, they would definitely not be able to defeat this guy. In fact, Jiang Shenwu didn't intend to rely on them to kill Deputy General Fengling. However, judging from the current situation, the four of them seemed to be discussing how to kill Deputy General Fengling. This surprised Kang Xinmu. It seemed like the four of them were quite ambitious. Originally, Kang Xinmu had only planned to let them come out to see the situation. He wanted to see how much of their starry sky inheritance could be used when dealing with experts. However, he did not expect that the four of them would be able to fight so well and not be at a disadvantage at all. After all, the four of them were working together. Therefore, when they fought against Deputy General Wind Spirit, he could only defend. At this moment, Deputy General Wind Spirit had not completely escaped from Gu Xinyue's starry sky killing formation. However, the four of them used their transcendent god weapons. Similar to Kong Shinmu's Transcendent God Weapon and Starfall Blade, the Transcendent God Weapons that the four of them had obtained had a considerable increase in their Starry Sky inheritance power. It could even double the power of their attacks. Without any hesitation, the four of them condensed the Star Rune of Starry Sky Decomposition and unleashed a terrifying attack on Deputy General Wind Spirit. Deputy General Wind Spirit had just suffered a loss and did not dare to underestimate the four of them. His Transcendent God Weapon unleashed all its power. Suddenly, the Wind Attribute, Water Attribute, and Space Attribute Starry Sky inheritance power erupted continuously, producing waves of power that spread rapidly to the surroundings. Whether it was the Dragon God's army or the Fu Shui army, they were all shocked to see this scene. No one had expected that Kong Shinmu and the four inconspicuous fellows could fight with Deputy General Wind Spirit to this extent. However, they were not dragon martial artists. Obviously, the main power that Gu Xinyue and the other three were using was not the power of dragon martial artists. However, Kong Shinmu, Gu Xinyue, and Chu Yueqiang were indeed dragon martial artists. Could it be a brand new power? Even the dragon martial artists on the Dragon God side had not received any news about the brand new power of inheritance. After all, they had been on the battlefield recently and had not even returned to the Torrent Fortress. How could they have gotten all kinds of gossip? Almost no one on the battlefield knew about the brand new power of inheritance. Now that Kong Shinmu and the others had unleashed it, both sides were a little confused. Especially on the Fu Shui army's side. Some people were still thinking that Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning were clearly not dragon martial artists and did not have the aura of dragon martial artists. How could they explode with such terrifying power by completely using the unknown power of inheritance? This was undoubtedly a little unbelievable. However, the power of the Starry Sky power of inheritance had just been revealed. In the following battle, Kong Shinmu did not intervene at all. He just maintained the Starry Sky isolation power so that Deputy General Wind Spirit could not escape. Then, Gu Xinyue and the other three joined forces to attack. With the power of the transcendent Starry Sky soldiers and all kinds of starry runes, the starry runes kept changing and condensing into different kinds of attacks when fighting with Deputy General Wind Spirit. This made Deputy General Wind Spirit a little tired. Deputy General Wind Spirit had been in a very passive state and did not even have the mind to defend. When he finally launched a counterattack, he found that Gu Xinyue and the others' defense was also not weak. Starry runes could be said to be an all-rounder. As long as one mastered enough starry runes, they could adapt to all kinds of battle environments. Using different methods to deal with different situations would obviously bring out the greatest effect. Chapter 50-16. Deputy General Fengling was getting more and more shocked. He observed the way Gu Xinyue and the other three fought and had an indescribable feeling in his heart. Was this the legendary power of nature? They did not need to cultivate any legacy power to unleash the strongest power that belonged to the human race. Deputy General Fengling could tell that Gu Xinyue and the other three were at the supreme god level in terms of the Starry Sky legacy power. The four of them could actually fight against Deputy General Fengling and even suppress him. This kind of legacy was too powerful. Deputy General Fengling used almost all his means but could not resist the increasingly fierce attacks of the four of them. His defense was being broken faster and faster. In the end, it was broken as soon as it was formed. The main reason was that the power in Deputy General Fengling's body was almost depleted. Generally speaking, the power in a supreme god-level expert's body would rarely be depleted. However, the attack of Gu Xinyue and the other three was too fierce. Every time Deputy General Fengling defended, he had to use all his power to defend. Therefore, he could not hold on for too long. His water god shadow was constantly being bombarded by the powerful Starry Sky legacy star runes. It looked like it could not hold on for much longer. Moreover, Kong Shinmu was sure that this guy was not pretending. This was because Kong Shinmu had the consciousness of the two old guys in his body. How could he not tell if this supreme god-level little guy was pretending or if he really could not hold on for much longer? Just as the four of them were closing in, Deputy General Fengling made an unexpected move. He did not seem to think much about it. At that moment, he concentrated all his power in one place. Then, the power completely condensed and exploded, directly shattering his water god shadow. As his water god shadow shattered, Deputy General Fengling's body was also severely injured. Everyone could sense that Deputy General Fengling's Transcendent God Stage 3 cultivation level was rapidly disappearing at that moment. This is self-destruction of the legacy? Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning were the first to react. They were shocked. They were more familiar with this kind of behavior. After all, they had done this before. However, they did not expect Deputy General Feng Ling to self-destruct his legacy at that moment. What was up with this guy? When Gu Xinyue sensed that Deputy General Feng Ling had destroyed his inheritance, he stopped attacking. If they attacked again, they could easily kill Deputy General Feng Ling. However, Deputy General Feng Ling's behavior was really confusing, so they didn't dare to act rashly. What's wrong with you? Chen Chong was the first to ask with a solemn voice. I want to join you. Deputy General Wind Spirit said firmly as he coughed out blood. What? This time, not only Gu Xinyue and the other three girls, even Kong Xinmu was a little surprised. Deputy General Feng Ling wanted to join them and cultivate the power of the starry sky? It was probably because he wanted to cultivate the power of the starry sky. However, what exactly was it that made him have such thoughts? Just as Kong Xinmu was feeling puzzled, the demon god ancestor in his mind suddenly chuckled. Isn't that simple? This fella can tell that he will definitely die today. In other words, he will definitely die as long as he stands on the side of the Talisman Water Tribe. Therefore, if he wants to live, he has to change his position as a member of the Talisman Water Tribe. Normally, this is impossible, but now, the power of the starry sky has given him this opportunity. Since he will definitely die anyway, he wants to fight for it. If he's lucky, not only will he not have to die, but he will also obtain the power of the starry sky. Wouldn't that be great? It had to be said that the demon god ancestor's guess about Deputy General Feng Ling's thoughts was rather accurate. After all, the demon god ancestor had lived for a long time, so he could naturally see through these kinds of thoughts. Of course, Deputy General Feng Ling's inner thoughts might be more complicated and he might struggle a little more. However, he still did it in the end. Since he had already destroyed his own Talisman Water Tribe cultivation base, there was no need for Kong Xinmu to kill him. This gave Kong Xinmu a headache. If I didn't kill him and just subdued him, would that count as my achievement points? He believed that this was the first time the dragon martialists of the Torrent Fortress had seen such a situation. At this time, a gentle female voice suddenly sounded in Kong Xinmu's ear. You can subdue him. This voice naturally came from the gentle girl, Emoya, who had followed Kong Xinmu to the Torrent Fortress. But where was Emoya now? Kong Xinmu was shocked to hear Emoya's voice. This was a battlefield that was very far from the Torrent Fortress. How did Emoya come over? If she hadn't come over, how could she have known what was happening here? Kong Xinmu looked around, but of course, he couldn't find any trace of Emoya. Hehehe. This little doll isn't simple. The demon god ancestor chuckled, but didn't say how Emoya wasn't simple. Kong Xinmu scratched his head and didn't think too much about it. Anyway, Emoya would be with him for a year, so he would understand her sooner or later. Therefore, he had to think about whether he should subdue Deputy General Feng Ling. Deputy General Feng Ling's cultivation was originally at Transcendent God Level 3. If he cultivated the power of the star inheritance, he would definitely reach the Transcendent God level soon. He has already destroyed his own cultivation in the Talisman Water Tribe. He definitely can't return to the Talisman Water Tribe. Kong Xinmu thought about it and felt that it wouldn't be too much of a problem to accept him. Moreover, Deputy General Feng Ling was very familiar with the Talisman Water Tribe. Perhaps there would be many things that he could use in the next year. Therefore, Kong Xinmu nodded to Gu Xinyue and the rest and said loudly, If that's the case, then join us. However, since you plan to join us, shouldn't you show us your sincerity? Deputy General Feng Ling chuckled at Kong Xinmu's words. When it came to this, he was already prepared. He naturally didn't lack sincerity. He had many secrets of the Talisman Water Tribe, but he didn't intend to reveal them directly. Instead, he planned to use them as a condition. After all, he wasn't sure what the power of the star inheritance was like. If Kong Xinmu hid something from him, he could also use some of the secrets of the Talisman Water Tribe to exchange for some resources. In any case, he had decided to cultivate the power of the inheritance of the starry sky. He had heard of this kind of power of nature, but as for how far he could cultivate it, he could only leave it to fate. Anyway, he had seen the situation today clearly. Chapter 50-17. The whole process of killing Deputy General Feng Ling was over. Kong Xinmu was still hesitant about accepting Deputy General Fengling as the inheritor of the power of the starry sky. However, since Mo Ye had spoken, there was no problem accepting him. What's your name? Yin Fengling. Okay, you will cultivate the power of the starry sky inheritance. You should be able to tell that this power belongs to the power of nature. Yes, I can tell. Let's go. After a simple conversation, Kong Xinmu took Yin Fengling into the small universe and told him how to start cultivating the power of the starry sky inheritance. In the small universe, there was a complete set of cultivation methods in the starry sky shrine. Kong Xinmu and the others did not need to start from scratch. They had already cultivated to the peak of the emperor level in the relic. However, for Yin Fengling, he had to start from scratch to cultivate the power of the starry sky inheritance. This made it much more difficult for Yin Fengling to cultivate the power of the starry sky inheritance. Of course, the fact that he was able to cultivate to the third level of the transcendent god in the Fu Shui tribe showed that his talent was not weak. Moreover, he had already advanced to the third level of the transcendent god. He now had a deep understanding of many powers. It would not be too difficult for him to cultivate the power of the starry sky inheritance again. As for how long it would take for him to recover to the level of the transcendent god, it was not certain. It might take a few months or a few years. It depended on how compatible Yin Fengling was with the power of the starry sky inheritance. Kong Xinmu could not tell. Jiang Xinwu was able to see the compatibility between a dragon warrior and the divine dragon's inheritance blood essence because he had the black dragon's consciousness in his body. To the black dragon's consciousness, he could only see the compatibility between the divine dragon's inheritance blood essence and not the compatibility between the starry sky's inheritance power and a person. As Yin Fengling was taken into the small universe by Kong Xinmu, the armies of the two races on both sides of the underwater canyon were all dumbfounded. The people of the Dragon God's army did not expect that Kong Xinmu would be able to subdue Deputy General Fengling. As for the Fu aquatic race's side, they were all in disbelief. Their deputy general had actually admitted defeat in the middle of the fight, and had been subdued? What was going on? The little guys of the Dragon God clan, or the experts who looked like little guys, were too fierce, weren't they? Moreover, what should they do now? Their princess was also captured by Kong Xinmu, and their deputy general was also subdued by Kong Xinmu. All of a sudden, the remaining two supreme god-level experts of the Talisman Marine tribe immediately gave the order for the entire army to retreat and leave this place. After losing Deputy General Wind's spirit, if they stayed here, they would be killed once they were surrounded. Therefore, they had to retreat first before the Dragon God Legion reacted. Therefore, because of the surrender of Deputy General Wind's spirit, the battle in the Undersea Canyon finally ended temporarily. This time, the Talisman Marine tribe would not attack this place again for at least a month. After all, the other party had suffered a great loss this time, and they had even lost Deputy General Wind's spirit. It would not be so easy for them to send people to attack again. Not everyone was qualified to lead an army. Deputy General Fengling was qualified, but those who were qualified like him already had a mission on hand. How could they be free so quickly? Then, Kong Xinmu let everyone return to the small universe. After this battle, Gu Xinyue and the other three had a great understanding and improvement of their inheritance of the power of the starry sky. This time, when they returned, they might be able to take the opportunity to try to break through to the second level of the transcendent god realm. After all, in the small universe, there was a whole set of cultivation methods related to the inheritance of the power of the starry sky. If they wanted to improve, the difficulty would be lower than cultivating the inheritance of the dragon gods. Moreover, in terms of cultivation resources, at this stage, they were basically guaranteed to have enough. Therefore, Kong Xinmu was still outside alone. He returned to the people of the Dragon God's army, said something to the Transcendent General of the army, and turned to leave. At this moment, the people of the Dragon God's army looked at the black divine dragon body of Kong Xinmu as he left, and they felt an unimaginable sense of admiration. This Kong Xinmu is so strong. He actually subdued Deputy General Wind's spirit of the Talisman Marine tribe. Deputy General Wind's spirit must have lost all hope. He actually destroyed his own inheritance in the battle. It's also because the strength that Kong Xinmu and the others displayed was too strong. In a situation where they could not resist, they could only choose to destroy their inheritance and surrender. No matter what they said, the people of the Dragon God's army remembered the name Kong Xinmu today. Because everything that had happened was too incredible. Not only did he capture the princess of the Dragon Gods in the chaos, but he also captured or subdued Deputy General Wind Spirit. From now on, Deputy General Wind Spirit would be one of them. At the thought of Gu Xinyue and the others who had fought fiercely with Deputy General Wind Spirit, everyone present felt a little fascinated. It was not hard to imagine that in the future, Deputy General Wind Spirit was likely to become an existence like Gu Xinyue. He could use the power of the Starry Sky inheritance to directly resist a supreme god existence that was 1 or 2 levels higher than him. This time, the results of the battle are quite good. Even the Dragon God's army commander had a face full of emotion. Not only had they defended this underwater canyon, but they had also captured a princess of the Talisman Marine tribe, and they had also subdued one of their deputy generals. The main thing was that the other party had lost a Supreme God Level 3 expert. This might not have much impact on the overall battle situation. But for the local battle situation of the Torrent Fortress, it was very likely to bring a completely different situation. This Dragon God army commander also looked at the black divine dragon body of Kong Shinmu as he left, and his eyes flashed with a different light. He felt that Kong Shinmu's trip to the Torrent Fortress was very likely to bring new opportunities to the battle situation of the Torrent Fortress. No matter what, the results of the battle were already very good. And Kong Shinmu soon returned to the Torrent Fortress. He came very quickly, and naturally, he returned very quickly. For Kong Shinmu, traveling was basically not a problem. Otherwise, he would have spent most of this year on the road. After his understanding of the space attribute void power was higher, the time needed to travel was naturally much less. After returning to the Torrent Fortress, Kong Shinmu saw the gentle girl Moya waiting for him. When she saw Kong Shinmu, she first bowed slightly. Kong Shinmu, your harvest this time is not bad. The Torrent Fortress has already promised to give you a portion of Heavenly Pivot Stone liquid in exchange for your achievement of crippling Deputy General Wind Spirit. Chapter 50-18. The amount of Dubhe Stone liquid that Kong Shinmu needed was in the hundreds. A portion of Dubhe Stone liquid was nothing at all. However, it was a good start. Although Kong Shinmu had obtained the first portion of Dubhe Stone liquid in less than a day, it was impossible for him to have such gains every day. After all, as the news spread and the Fu Shui tribe and the other 3 tribes continued to spread, Kong Shinmu's actions in the future would definitely not be so easy. This time, Deputy General Fengling and the Fu Shui tribe were not prepared at all. However, as Kong Shinmu continued to kill the opponent's supreme god-level experts on the battlefield, the other party would definitely be aware of it. Therefore, he had to kill more opponents early to ensure that he would obtain most of the Dubhe Stone liquid that he needed. Since I have obtained this portion of Dubhe Stone liquid and Fengling has started to cultivate the power of the Starry Sky inheritance, it's time for me to start my next plan. Kong Shinmu's previous plan was to kill Deputy General Fengling first, then head to the area around the Torrent Fortress to kill enemies there. As long as he killed enough enemies, he would be able to obtain enough achievement points. For Jiang Shenwu, this could be said to be like a fish in water. After all, Jiang Shenwu seemed to be at the peak of the Emperor stage, but in reality, he could directly kill an existence at the peak of the Emperor stage with one move. In the chaotic battlefield, as long as Kong Shinmu moved carefully and didn't let others notice too much, he could continuously kill peak Emperor-level beings or even kill entire teams. Therefore, Kong Shinmu was quite optimistic about the number of achievement points he could obtain by participating in this chaotic battle. Moreover, now that Gu Xinyue and the others had begun to attempt a breakthrough, Kong Shinmu would definitely participate in the chaotic battle and kill as many enemies as he could. You must be careful in the chaotic battle. Do your best. Moya reminded Kong Shinmu before leaving. Kong Shinmu didn't know where she had gone, but Moya definitely had a way to find out about Kong Shinmu's situation outside. No matter what, Moya wouldn't pose any danger to Kong Shinmu. She was sent by Emperor Shi's divine dragon, so she was definitely one of them. Although Kong Shinmu was curious about Moya's identity, he trusted her. After Moya left, Kong Shinmu didn't stay in the fortress for too long. After a short rest, he headed straight for the chaotic battle zone. This was a checkpoint outside of the Torrent stronghold. This checkpoint usually produced some cultivation resources. Although it wasn't too rich, it was still an important resource point for the Torrent stronghold. And now, this place was being attacked by several Talisman Water Race legions. The generals and deputy generals of these Talisman Water Race legions were all existences at the Transcendent God Level 3 and above. There were even some at the Transcendent God level 7. Therefore, when Kong Shinmu was fighting on this battlefield, he had to avoid these existences that were too strong. Of course, under normal circumstances, most existences at the Transcendent God level would be fighting with the dragon martial artists at the Transcendent God level. They wouldn't be a threat to Kong Shinmu and the dragon martial artists of the other legions. If the number of experts on both sides wasn't equal, the entire battlefield wouldn't be in a stalemate for so long. The number of experts on both sides could basically maintain a balance. Otherwise, once experts joined the battlefield, the ordinary Emperor-level and King-level cultivators wouldn't be able to resist at all. In such a chaotic battlefield, even an entire legion would find it difficult to form an effective formation to fight against existences that were too strong. When Kong Shinmu arrived at this area, he realized that this area was in a cave in an underwater canyon. This cave was in an underwater canyon that extended in all directions. There were exits and entrances everywhere. In this huge underwater canyon, there was a huge piece of scorched rock at the bottom of the sea. Within the scorched rock, there were caves that extended in all directions. The sound of powerful vibrations could be heard everywhere, and they spread for hundreds of miles. To Kong Shinmu, such a vast and intense battlefield was simply the best battlefield. He was just like a dragon god expert who wasn't being targeted. Moreover, he entered the battlefield as a peak emperor level, so he wouldn't attract anyone's attention. This allowed him to kill the invaders of the Talisman water race as quickly as possible after he entered the battlefield. Kong Shinmu arrived in this underwater canyon that extended in all directions. He transformed into a pitch-black divine dragon and quietly joined the battlefield. This battlefield was quieter than the one he had been to before. The smell of blood was also lighter. However, this didn't mean that there were fewer enemies of the Talisman water race here. It was because the area of the intense battle was too large. Hence, everyone scattered in all directions. Some teams could even hide in the caves of the battlefield and specially set up traps to wait for their opponents to pass by. And Kong Shinmu encountered such a situation. Just as he passed by an intersection in a cave, a terrifying wave of energy suddenly came from the shadows. Then, a huge lightning net swept in from all directions and enveloped Kong Shinmu entirely. However, Kong Shinmu was already prepared for this. He had even deliberately entered this trap. When the lightning net appeared, Kong Shinmu also sensed the location of the person who had set up the trap. It was a small team of Talisman Water Race Emperor-level experts. The leader was a peak Emperor-level expert, followed by 2 7th-level Emperor-level team leaders. A total of 12 people were hiding in the shadows. When the lightning net trap was activated and swept towards Kong Shinmu, the 12 people thought that they would be able to catch a big fish. After all, if they could kill a peak Emperor-level opponent, the benefits would be considerable. However, they didn't know who they had encountered. When Kong Shinmu sensed the aura of the other party hiding in the shadows, he immediately used the power of the Starry Sky Inheritance. Then, he shuttled through the void and appeared directly where the other party was hiding. This was a huge, pitch-black cave. The 12 Talisman Water Race cultivators had all condensed the shadow of the water god and were hiding here. Unfortunately, they had been discovered by Kong Shinmu with his acute senses. They didn't have any time to react. Kong Shinmu's 9 ultimate flood dragon explosion erupted, and he also activated the 9-layer gem and the void gem. With Kong Shinmu's current strength, as long as he sealed the entire space and prevented the other party from escaping, he would be able to kill the peak Emperor-level Talisman Water Race powerhouse with one move. In just one move, a total of 81 layers of hornless dragon explosions exploded. Chapter 50-19. As Kong Shinmu's 81 Hydra explosion exploded in this hidden cave, the 12 Talisman Aquatic Race powerhouses didn't even have time to make a sound before they were blasted to pieces by the terrifying energy ripples. The 12 Water God Phantoms were blasted to pieces like tofu by Kong Shinmu's Hydra explosion. They disintegrated and were swept away along with their bodies. The 12 Talisman Aquatic Race powerhouses hidden in the cave didn't have the ability to react at all. They didn't even have time to send out any signals for help before they died at the hands of Kong Shinmu. The leading peak Emperor-level powerhouse managed to hold on for a short while. Unfortunately, he couldn't withstand Kong Shinmu's second Hydra explosion and was killed on the spot. Kong Shinmu killed 12 Talisman Aquatic Race powerhouses in one move. Among these 12, there were 5 Emperor-level powerhouses and 7 King-level powerhouses. After killing them, Kong Shinmu took out the profound hearts in their bodies as proof that he had killed them. Then, Kong Shinmu collected all the storage treasures, cultivation resources, and weapons they had left behind. These were his gains from this trip. Although Kong Shinmu didn't need them right now, they were accumulating. In any case, Kong Shinmu would be killing the Talisman Aquatic race opponents who had invaded Torrent Fort for some time. When all of them were accumulated, it should be quite a large sum. Of course, Kong Shinmu didn't want to let go of any of them. Time passed slowly. Kong Shinmu continued to move in and out of the uneven caves in this underwater canyon. Most of the time, he would conceal himself and then find his opponents and kill them. Because there were many caves in this underwater canyon and the terrain was very complicated, it was difficult for news to spread. Although Kong Shinmu had found and killed many Talisman Aquatic race teams, the Talisman Aquatic race really didn't notice this at all. During this period, Kong Shinmu sensed that the Fu Shui tribe had made some movements, and they should be preparing to retreat. However, this retreat was not because of Kong Shinmu, but because they had the intention to retreat. There were many members of the Dragon God clan in this area. They defended this place to the death, preventing the army of the Fu Shui race from completely breaking through and occupying it. If this went on, the Talisman Aquatic tribe wouldn't be able to reap any benefits, so they decided to retreat. This was something that Kong Shinmu knew from the beginning. Before he went to kill Deputy General Feng Ling, Kong Shinmu already knew about the situation here. The Fu clan should be planning to retreat. Moreover, if something happened to Deputy General Wind's spirit, it might cause the Talisman Water Race army to retreat even faster. Of course, because the terrain of the entire undersea canyon area was too complicated, even supreme powerhouses would find it difficult to spread the news to every corner of this area. Therefore, the efficiency of the Talisman Water Race army's retreat was very low. In this area, Kong Shinmu continuously killed the Talisman Water Race teams, including the lone experts of the Talisman Water Race. Kong Shinmu even quickly encountered two first-stage supreme gods from the Talisman Water Race. They wandered in this area and were in charge of cleaning up the small teams of the Dragon God clan. Unfortunately, they were met by Kong Shinmu, so naturally, they had no chance of survival. In this area, Kong Shinmu continuously killed the opponents of the Talisman Water Race. In the next 3 days, he killed at least 300 people. Among these 300 people, at least 100 were Emperor-level existences. If they were placed in the Dragon Martial Continent, they would all be at the level of a Dragon Emperor country's Dragon Emperor level. They were the strongest existences in a Dragon Emperor country. There were even many peak Emperor-level existences in the Dragon Martial Continent. It should be known that there were many Dragon Emperor countries' Dragon Warriors in the Dragon Martial Continent, such as Dragon Emperor Yen, whose Divine Dragon Inheritance blood essence was only at the 4th or 5th stage of the Emperor level. There were almost no peak Emperor-level existences in the entire Dragon Martial Continent. Only some of the old fellows in the hidden Dragon Warrior families could reach this level. However, on the battlefield between the Talisman Water Race and the Dragon God clan, this level of inheritance blood essence could be seen everywhere. Gradually, the more Kong Shinmu killed in this area, the more members of the Talisman Water Race army remained. It could be known that a few Talisman Water Race armies had already retreated from this area, but there were still many Talisman Water Race experts left to cover the retreat of others. Kong Shinmu soon met a Transcendent God Level 3 Deputy General from the Talisman Water Race. At first, this Deputy General only treated Kong Shinmu as a small soldier on the Dragon God clan side and wanted to kill Kong Shinmu directly. Unfortunately, Kong Shinmu used the power of the Starry Sky Inheritance to seal the space and kill his opponent instead. With Kong Shinmu's current combat power, it was almost no problem for him to deal with a Transcendent God Level 3. Of course, the premise was that Kong Shinmu had to use his full strength. Now, Kong Shinmu's peak strength was basically at this level. Although he had reached the peak of the Emperor level and his cultivation had reached the peak of the Reincarnation Tribulation realm, his main strength was still in the power of the Starry Sky Inheritance. The power of the Starry Sky Inheritance was still at the Transcendent God Level 2. Combined with his own Dragon God clan strength, he could basically kill a Transcendent God Level 3 opponent at his limit. Moreover, it took him a lot of effort, sealing the space and constantly exhausting the opponent's strength. Finally, when the opponent's strength was almost exhausted, he finally launched his killer move. That was already quite troublesome. However, to Kong Shinmu, he still hoped to meet such an opponent. After all, If he could kill such an opponent, the achievement points that Kong Shinmu could obtain would be much more than killing an enemy team of the Dragon Emperor. This battle lasted for a total of 7 days. After 7 days, Kong Shinmu wandered around this area. He could only see the experts of the Dragon God Clan army taking inventory of the battlefield. There were no living Talisman Water Clan cultivators. At this time, Kong Shinmu knew that the invasion of the Talisman Water Clan had ended. The other party had retreated. Within these 7 days, the number of Talisman Water Clan experts that had died in the hands of Kong Shinmu alone had reached more than 1,000. This was almost 1/10 of the army's number. It could be said that the Talisman Water Clan probably did not expect to suffer such heavy casualties during their retreat. It should be known that the Talisman Water Clan army rarely took the initiative to find their opponents during their retreat. Their priority was to preserve their lives. Even so, Kong Shinmu had killed all the hidden teams of the Talisman Water Clan that were preparing to retreat. Kong Shinmu had gained a lot. He had killed a total of more than 1,000 Talisman Water Clan cultivators. Among them, 300 were Emperor level, and about 100 of them were peak Emperor level. This included 1 Transcendent God level 3, 2 Transcendent God level 2, and 6 Transcendent God level 1 opponents. Chapter 50-20. Kong Shinmu could even be sure that the achievement points he had earned this time were enough to exchange for all 6 portions of Celestial Stone liquid in the Torrent Stronghold. Although it took 7 days, Kong Shinmu was quite satisfied with the gains he had made. When the battle was over, the Dragon God Clan army responsible for checking the battlefield also found many corpses of the Xueqi clan, which were beyond their expectations. These corpses were basically surrounded by broken phantoms of the water god, and they were already dead. These were the enemies killed by the dragon warriors of their army that were not recorded in the army. In other words, a mysterious person had helped them kill many enemies. At first, there were rumors in the Dragon God Clan army that some organization was helping them to deal with the opponents of the Xueqi clan. After all, unless it was some organization, how could they kill the hidden Xueqi clan cultivators so accurately? But later, there was another rumor that a young genius dragon warrior had come to the battlefield and helped them kill thousands of opponents of the Xueqi clan army. But it would be difficult for the members of the Dragon God Clan army to figure out the specific situation. Only the commanders of the Dragon God Clan army could get the news from the Torrent Stronghold that Kong Shinmu had come here. And before this, Kong Shinmu had subdued Deputy General Fengling of the Xueqi clan, who was at the 3rd level of the Supreme God Realm, and made Deputy General Fengling destroy his own cultivation on the spot. This made the commanders of the several armies of the Dragon God Clan all remember the genius name Kong Shinmu. And for Kong Shinmu himself, he had the most bountiful harvest this time. He had killed thousands of opponents of the Xueqi clan, and he was able to do so with the help of the devouring power. Under the effect of the devouring power, Kong Shinmu did not need to rest every time he killed an opponent. He could even directly devour the opponent and directly restore his own strength. This made Kong Shinmu almost like a perpetual motion machine, searching for, attacking, and killing enemies on the battlefield. Over the course of 7 days, he had killed thousands of members of the Talisman Aqua race, and Kong Shinmu had reaped bountiful rewards. Even if most of the cultivation resources carried by the Xueqi tribe were limited to the Xueqi tribe and weren't that valuable to Kong Shinmu, the total value of these cultivation resources was at least 500,000 gold dragon coins. Of course, this was only the value to the Talisman Water tribe. If it was converted to gold dragon coins, it would be considered quite good if it was worth 200 million gold dragon coins. Most importantly, the Xueqi clan that went to the battlefield would not have many things on them. Many army Xueqi would give their belongings to people they trusted, family or friends before going to the battlefield. In any case, it was useless to bring it to the battlefield. At most, he could keep some restorative pills and the like. These things, along with some of the Water Clan's battle weapons, had allowed him to reach 200,000. Otherwise, Kong Shinmu wouldn't have been able to obtain so many cultivation resources. Of course, it was already very good to have this much. Background: this could only be considered an unexpected gain. The most important thing was the achievement points obtained from killing thousands of members of the Xueqi clan. According to the Dragon God's rules for obtaining achievement points on the battlefield, the achievement points that Kong Shinmu obtained this time were just enough to exchange for 5 portions of Dubhe Stone liquid. This was already enough to exchange for all the Dubhe Stone liquid in the Torrent Fortress. Although it was easy for Kong Shinmu to obtain these achievement points, It was all because of the complicated terrain of the underwater canyon cave battlefield. If it weren't for the complicated terrain, the Fu Shui clan would have retreated long ago. Therefore, this kind of opportunity for Kong Shinmu to pick up the Dubhe stone liquid was a rare opportunity. Of course, with this kind of opportunity, Kong Shinmu's plan to collect Dubhe stone liquid had a pretty good start. And the 1,000 experts of the Fu Shui clan that Kong Shinmu killed were definitely a heavy blow to the Fu Shui clan. A Fu Shui clan legion only had 10,000 to 20,000 practitioners, and these 1,000 people accounted for 1/10 of them. It was conceivable that after the legion of the Fu Shui clan retreated, they would find that their losses were more than expected. It would not be so easy to replenish the legion. In this kind of battlefield between races, life and death were not up to one's own control. Even supreme existences couldn't guarantee that they could survive. Therefore, it was definitely not easy for the Fu Shui clan to recruit such practitioners to join their legion. It could be said that if one of them died, there would be one less. If this happened a few more times, the Talisman Aqua race's army in the Torrent Fortress would probably be crippled. It was a pity that the Talisman Aqua race wouldn't give them another chance after suffering such a loss. From the beginning to the end, the Fu Shui clan didn't know who had caused such heavy losses to their legions. All in all, after the trouble that Kong Shinmu had caused in the two battlefields, the Fu Shui clan's offensive in the Torrent Fortress could be said to be slowed down. On one hand, they had lost too many legions of practitioners. On the other hand, they had lost 2 Supreme God Level 3 generals. In this kind of situation, if they continued to fight, they were afraid that their own losses would be even greater. The main reason was that the loss of more than 10 Supreme God experts had a huge impact on them. Once there was no one to restrain the Supreme God experts of the Dragon Gods, the legion of the Fu Shui clan wouldn't be able to play its role. In this kind of situation, if they took the initiative to attack, it was simply an act of suicide. It had to be said that the tense situation in the Torrent Fortress had changed because of the 2 battles that Kong Shinmu had participated in. The legions of the Fu Shui clan had all retreated. It could be seen that the other party definitely wouldn't take the initiative to attack at the moment. And the key was not that Kong Shinmu's combat power was too strong, but that he had the cover of a peak Emperor-level expert. If there really was a Supreme God Level 3 expert on the battlefield, the other party would definitely be able to detect it very quickly and then deal with it. But Kong Shinmu was only a peak Emperor-level expert. It was not at all worth it for the other party to mobilize such a large force. Therefore, this gave Kong Shinmu an opportunity. Of course, after this time, the legion of the Fu Shui clan in the Torrent Fortress should have already known about the existence of Kong Shinmu. Mainly, the legion of Deputy General Fengling had seen with their own eyes that Kong Shinmu had captured their princess of the Fu Shui clan and made Deputy General Fengling surrender. This matter must have already been known by the higher-ups of the Fu Shui clan, and this matter must have already been dealt with. Of course, Kong Shinmu didn't need to think about this. He only needed to know that he had to be more careful when dealing with the legion of the Fu Shui clan. This was because the other party might already be prepared to deal with Kong Shinmu. However, Kong Shinmu planned to change his location. Kong Shinmu could already obtain all of the Dubhe stone liquid in the Torrent Fortress. Chapter 50-21. After the Torrent Fortress, there was another fortress. Because time was tight, and mainly because he wanted to get his hands on all the Dubhe stone liquid before the other party could react, Kong Shinmu was extremely fast. He did not stop to rest at all. Together with Mo Ye, he went from the Torrent Fortress to the other fortress of the Dragon Gods. All the fortresses welcomed Kong Shinmu's arrival. After all, Jiang Shenwu was special. He was able to defeat a supreme expert who was at the 3rd stage of the Supreme God stage with his cultivation at the peak of the Royal stage. This kind of method could be said to be successful on the battlefield. He could use it to obtain many opportunities that ordinary people could not get. And treating Kong Shinmu as a strategic target could also play a decisive role on the battlefield. For example, in the Torrent Fortress, because of Kong Shinmu's appearance, he had only participated in 2 battles, but he had already changed the entire situation of the battle. And Kong Shinmu's results were also very impressive. He had even captured a Fu Shui princess. Because of Yin Fengling's surrender, Kong Shinmu learned the identity of this Fu Shui princess. This golden-haired girl was called Qi Yan. She was the youngest daughter of the Qi family head, one of the royal families of the Fu Shui race. The Fu Shui race was different from the Demon God clan. In the entire Fu Shui race, There were a total of 13 royal families, and they jointly led the billions of people of the Fu Shui race. Although Qi Yan's status was not as unique as Xueqi's in the demon god clan, she was quite famous in the entire Fu Shui royal family. After all, her cultivation talent was quite strong, and she had stepped onto the battlefield at a very young age. She was someone who could truly surpass herself. The other members of the younger generation of the Fu Shui royal family of the same age were basically holed up at home. And this time, it was Qi Yan's first time being captured by Kong Xinmu. The key was that she had not expected Kong Xinmu's battle prowess to reach such a terrifying level. At the same realm, there was actually someone stronger than her? In fact, Kong Xinmu was not at the same realm as her. In the case of the power of the star inheritance, Kong Xinmu's realm was much higher than hers. Her advantage actually lay in the golden water ripple pendant. Unfortunately, the golden wave that the golden water ripple pendant released was also blocked by Kong Xinmu. It could not kill Kong Xinmu. Under such circumstances, it was normal for Qi Yan to be captured by Kong Xinmu. Under such circumstances, it was normal for Qi Yan to be captured by Kong Xinmu. Therefore, when Jiang Xinwu headed to the next fortress and was about to rest for half a day, he found a secluded place and headed to the small starry sky world, where he met Yin Fengling and Qi Yan who had just arrived in this world. As for Qi Yan, Jiang Xinwu hadn't thought about how to deal with her. Yin Fengling, on the other hand, was already attempting to cultivate the power of the star inheritance. Qi Yan was imprisoned by Kong Xinmu in a confinement room in the Star Divine Hall. When Kong Xinmu came to see her, she was meditating and seemed to be cultivating. Her long golden hair was rather beautiful, but it was a pity that she was too shrewish. As soon as Kong Xinmu appeared, she opened her eyes warily. "Where did you lock me up?" Qi Yan stared at Kong Xinmu warily. Clearly, she understood her current situation. "In a place where no one else can find me." Kong Xinmu shook his head and said, "You don't have to count on your clansmen to save you, because they won't be able to find you at all." "Is that so?" "It doesn't matter where you lock me up. It's fine if they can't find me, as long as they can find you." Qi Yan seemed rather calm. "As long as they can find you, they'll naturally be able to find me. If I'm not wrong, you're the only one who can enter this place, right?" "You don't need to know that." Kong Xinmu smiled faintly. "Let me ask you, what do you plan to do with me? Take me to exchange for cultivation resources that are useful to you?" Qi Yan said calmly, "You should already know my identity. Since that's the case, you should understand the value of my identity. Let me go, and I can get someone to send you cultivation resources worth 1,000,000 gold dragon coins. How about it?" "But why do I feel that your identity is worth more than 1,000,000 gold dragon coins?" Kong Xinmu narrowed his eyes. "Dream on." Qi Yan seemed to see through Kong Xinmu's thoughts. She sneered and said, "You want to use me as a hostage to force the talisman aqua race to retreat, right? Let me tell you, that's impossible. Although my identity isn't low, this matter concerns the entire race. How can it change because of my own safety?" Of course, to be honest, the talisman aqua race didn't gain much from attacking the dragon gods. However, a long time ago, the dragon gods also attacked the talisman aqua race in the same way. This time, we're just taking revenge for all the warriors of the talisman aqua race who sacrificed their lives. The dragon gods called themselves the overlords of this world, hindering the development and rise of all the other races. Did you ever think that this day would come? This was something that Kong Xinmu didn't know about. And it seemed that even the ancestors of the demon gods didn't know about this. After all, although this had happened a long time ago, it wasn't as far back as the era of the ancestors of the demon gods. One must know that there were many ancestors in the era of the ancestors of the demon gods. Even the ancestral dragons still existed. But now, the ancestral dragons had all fallen, and even the ancestors of the demon gods had fallen. They no longer had the glory of the past. Back then, it was an era of chaos, but the ancestral dragon was indeed the king of the world. Later, the dragon god clan inherited the ancestral dragon's blood essence and called themselves the masters of the world. In fact, there was not much wrong with that. Of course, it wasn't so friendly to the other races. During the era of the ancestral dragons, the talisman aqua race also had a water god, and the demon god race also had a demon god. There were other races, and their respective inheritances came from places where they all had powerful ancestors. But one day, all of these ancestral-level powerhouses fell, and no one knew what happened. As for what had suddenly happened that day, even the ancestors of the demon gods couldn't remember. They couldn't remember what had happened that caused so many powerful beings to fall in this world. This led to the rise of the current human race, and they became stronger by cultivating the bloodline of the ancestors. As for the human race's immersion in cultivating the power of nature, this era was about the same as the era of the ancestors. At that time, the human race relied on the power of nature. Although the strongest of them couldn't reach the level of the strongest ancestral dragons and ancestral demons, they could already compete with some ordinary ancestral dragons and ancestral demons. That was an era when all things were at their strongest. And now, although the dragon gods called themselves the masters of the world, in reality, they didn't even have a single ancestor. It was the same for the other races. Chapter 50-22. Kong Shinmu walked out of the temple where Qi Yan was imprisoned. He shook his head. No matter what had happened in ancient times, and no matter whether the dragon gods had invaded the Fu Shui clan, he only knew that the Fu Shui clan had joined forces with other clans to attack the dragon gods. Since that was the case, he had to find a way to repel them. Regardless of whether he could do it or not, as long as he did his best in this war, he would have a clear conscience. As for how to deal with Qi Yan, he had no specific plans for the time being. However, with Qi Yan in his hands, he would have an additional bargaining chip when he encountered danger on the battlefield of the Fu Shui clan in the future. Who knows, Qi Yan might be able to save his or someone else's life. Therefore, Kong Shinmu did not plan to touch Qi Yan for the time being. Qi Yan was imprisoned in the small world of inheritance in the starry sky, and all her powers were sealed. Although she could still absorb spiritual energy to cultivate, her cultivation speed was not fast. It was even more impossible for her to break through to the supreme god level of the Fu Shui clan. The current Qi Yan was like a fish on the chopping board in front of Kong Shinmu. She did not have any chance to resist. Therefore, releasing her when she was useful would bring the greatest benefits to Kong Shinmu. Next, Kong Shinmu went to see Yin Fengling. Yin Fengling had been arranged to live in a temple by Kong Shinmu. This starry sky temple was specially arranged and built for beginners in the power of inheritance of the starry sky. There were many general information about the power of inheritance of the starry sky, the state of cultivation, and the characteristics of the power of inheritance of the starry sky. However, there were no records of other powers of nature. It was only briefly mentioned that in addition to the power of inheritance of the starry sky, there were also the power of inheritance of fire, inheritance of ice, inheritance of gale, and so on. Kong Shinmu did not understand these powers of inheritance. When Kong Shinmu came to see Yin Fengling, he also learned about these powers of nature. He knew that the human race in ancient times was actually very powerful. It was easy to imagine how difficult it was for the human race to develop such a powerful inheritance when surrounded by ancestor-level powerhouses. At that time, ancestor-level powerhouses were all worshipped by the human race. Humans consecrated the ancestral dragon, while humans consecrated the ancestral fiends. There were also humans that consecrated other experts at the ancestral dragon level. When experts like the ancestral dragon and ancestral fiends suddenly perished, the different human clans began to diverge. They each cultivated the heritage of the ancestral dragon and ancestral fiends. From then on, the Dragon God clan, Demon God clan, Talisman Water clan, and many other clans were born. Kong Shinmu learned about Yin Fengling's cultivation progress, and knew that he had just started cultivating the power of the starry sky inheritance. Therefore, he did not stay here for too long. 3 hours later, Kong Shinmu left the small starry sky world and returned to the second outer domain fortress of the Dragon God clan. In the next 3 months, it could be said that Kong Shinmu had a bountiful harvest. Because his appearance was very sudden, and he quickly went back and forth between the fortresses of the outer domain, the opponents who attacked the dragon gods were unable to guard against him. In some key war situations, once Kong Shinmu appeared, the balance would be broken. Unless it was a real high-end combat power, such as the battlefield of the Supreme Master, or the battlefield of the middle stage or high stage Supreme God, Kong Shinmu had no chance to get involved. In other battlefields, Kong Shinmu was completely successful. He passed through 10 outer domain fortresses in succession, helped them repel the major legions that attacked the 4 clans, and killed more than 10,000 enemies. Such a brilliant achievement began to spread among the major fortresses of the Dragon God clan. Many active cultivators of the Dragon God clan in the major fortresses heard the name of Kong Shin Mu, and it was constantly sung by people. But at the same time, the name of Kong Shin Mu finally spread among the four clans. Because every time Kong Shin Mu appeared, he could basically make one of their legions collapse and cause them to lose on a certain battlefront. The four clans had already joined forces to analyze and deal with Kong Shin Mu. Unfortunately, in these 3 months, it was difficult for the four clans to be on the same side. The transmission of information was often not as fast as Kong Shin Mu's actions, causing them to be unable to completely deal with Kong Shin Mu's appearance. This also caused them to suffer heavy losses in these 3 months. On the side of the Fu Shui clan alone, Kong Shin Mu had probably killed more than 5,000 people, including many powerful supreme god generals. Even the princess of the Fu Shui clan, Qi Yan, had been captured by Kong Shin Mu. At present, no one knew how Qi Yan's situation was. Some people said that Qi Yan had already been killed by Kong Shin Mu, but others said that Qi Yan had been imprisoned by Kong Shin Mu. Once Kong Shin Mu encountered any danger, he could use Qi Yan's life to exchange for his life. All these rumors could not affect Kong Shin Mu. And Kong Shin Mu continued to dominate the battlefield, allowing him to gain a lot. All of his gains were basically exchanged for Dubhe stone liquid. In addition to eating, Kong Shin Mu had an extra 300,000 gold dragon coins. The rest were exchanged for 45 portions of Dubhe stone liquid. The remaining 300,000 gold dragon coins could be regarded as an extra gain for Kong Shin Mu, which could be saved for a rainy day. But now, Kong Shin Mu had now discovered that as time continued to pass, it was becoming more and more difficult for him to move. Unless he could catch his opponent off guard when he first arrived at a certain fortress, as long as he appeared once, it wouldn't be easy for him to find another opportunity to do so. As long as he appeared once in a fortress, the four-race army that was attacking that fortress would all retreat and choose not to fight with Kong Shin Mu. This made Kong Shin Mu rather depressed. But fortunately, there had been no ambush so far, and Kong Shin Mu had not encountered too much danger. In terms of danger, the most dangerous time was probably when he was dealing with Qi Yan, when he encountered the unparalleled Golden Wave. Apart from that Golden Wave, Kong Shin Mu basically did not encounter any other danger. And at this time, after 3 months of settling, cultivating, and trying, Gu Xinyue and the other 3 had finally reached the 2nd level of the inheritance of the Starry Sky. This meant that the combat power of the 4 of them had reached the level of Kong Shin Mu. Of course, if the devouring power was included, the 4 of them combined would not be a match for Kong Shin Mu. Chapter 50-23. When Kong Shin Mu wandered around the Dragon God's Outland Fortress and fought on the battlefield for 3 months, Gu Xinyue and the rest's strength had increased. Unfortunately, at this time, whenever Kong Shin Mu appeared on a battlefield, his opponents would gather and escape. Although they were only King Stage and Emperor Stage cultivators, if they gathered together to activate the formation, Kong Shin Mu would still be unable to fight against them. Thus, he could only watch as his opponents gathered and escaped. At most, Kong Shin Mu could kill 1 or 2 teams of enemies before his opponents gathered. This way, the benefits he obtained from killing enemies would decrease, and the efficiency of earning achievement points and Dubhe stone liquid would decrease. It seems like I need to disappear for a while to improve myself. Kong Shin Mu discussed with Gu Xinyue and the rest and came to this conclusion. With their current strength, they could only barely fight against a 4th stage transcendent god. However, if Kong Shin Mu could cultivate the power of the Starry Sky inheritance to the 3rd stage transcendent god, they might be able to defeat a 4th stage transcendent god if they worked together. Therefore, next, Jiang Shenwu needed to improve his strength in the path of inheritance in the Starry Sky. This way, they could try to hunt down higher-level opponents. Previously, they had chosen opponents who were no higher than the 3rd stage transcendent god. As a result, any enemy army that did not have a 4th stage transcendent god would flee when they saw Kong Shin Mu and the rest. However, Kong Shin Mu and the rest had yet to fight against an opponent led by a 4th stage transcendent god. It was very likely that the other party was above the 4th stage transcendent god and was still looking for Kong Shin Mu and the rest. They wanted to get rid of Kong Shin Mu and the rest. This way, as long as Kong Shin Mu increased his strength, he would naturally be able to unleash a stronger effect. On a battlefield like this, the element of surprise was the greatest weapon. Hence, Kong Shin Mu decided to cultivate in seclusion for a period of time. However, if he were to cultivate in seclusion like that, It would take at least a few months for Kong Shinmu to break through to Transcendent God Stage 4. He couldn't just cultivate in seclusion like that. Therefore, Kong Shinmu came up with a plan to steal his opponent's time. This was different from massacring others. If one massacred others, their life aura would decrease and their power would explode, which would be easily detected by others. However, if he attacked in a complicated terrain, he could isolate a certain space and use the heaven-deficient demonic dragon of ice and fire to steal his opponent's time. In that case, his opponent wouldn't be able to detect his presence very quickly. Of course, Kong Shinmu's target had to be a supreme god-level opponent. Otherwise, the efficiency of devouring time would not be high. It just so happened that there was a battlefield with complicated terrain outside the Skyflower Fortress that Kong Shinmu was in. The Dragon Gods and the Great Bat Clan were engaged in an intense battle. Kong Shinmu had just arrived at the Skyflower Fortress. Although the Great Bat Clan would definitely be on guard, they definitely didn't expect Kong Shinmu to come directly to the Skyflower Fortress. This provided an excellent opportunity for Kong Shinmu. Unfortunately, the time conversion that Kong Shinmu devoured was only effective on himself. It wasn't that he couldn't devour time for others to use, but it would consume too much time power, which would reduce the cultivation time that Kong Shinmu obtained. Now, the main thing was that Kong Shinmu had to improve his own cultivation. Therefore, there was no need for Kong Shinmu to consider Gu Xinyue and the rest at this time. The key was that Kong Shinmu was short on time. He had to get his hands on all the Dubhe Stone liquid within a year. This was the key to Kong Shinmu's current situation. After obtaining enough Dubhe Stone liquid, Kong Shinmu would consider giving Gu Xinyue and the rest time to quickly improve. This was the best choice. After arriving at the Skyflower Fortress, Kong Shinmu understood the specific situation outside the fortress and accepted a mission. Assassinate the 4th-level Supreme God Deputy General Yu Fu of the Great Bat Clan? Although the Deputy General Yu Fu of the Great Bat Clan was only at the level of a Deputy General, he was much stronger than the 3rd-level Supreme God that Kong Shinmu had dealt with before. The difference between a 3rd-level Supreme God and a 4th-level Supreme God was huge. In fact, it was normal for a 4th-level Supreme God to be able to deal with 3 to 5 3rd-level Supreme God at the same time. When Moya found out that Kong Shinmu was going to deal with the 4th-level Supreme God Deputy General Yu Fu, she was a little surprised. The gentle girl pursed her lips and chuckled. Kong Shinmu, are you confident? If I'm confident, I'll communicate with the fortress. No problem, but I need some time. Give me a month. That should be enough. Kong Shinmu thought about it and said, spend a month to kill a 4th-level Supreme God. If you succeed, you will be able to obtain 3 portions of Dubhe Stone liquid from the Skyflower Fortress. Moya calculated and chuckled. In terms of efficiency, it's not slow. However, the prerequisite is that you can really kill your opponent. The 4th-level Supreme God Deputy General of the Great Bat Clan is not easy to deal with. Of course, as long as you are sure, I won't stop you. Yes, I'm sure. Kong Shinmu said straightforwardly. Regarding this, he already had a series of plans. Moya nodded when she heard this, and then she turned and left. Jiang Shenwu heaved a sigh of relief as he gazed at her graceful and beautiful figure. Although he was already very familiar with Moya, recently, Kong Shinmu could feel more and more pressure from her. It was an inexplicable pressure that Kong Shinmu did not know where it came from. However, Kong Shinmu had a feeling that Moya's strength was probably not weaker than his. Although he could not sense her cultivation aura, Kong Shinmu and the other Starry Sky inheritance power could not sense her power aura either. Therefore, Kong Shinmu guessed that Moya had also cultivated some power of nature inheritance. This was quite possible. After all, Moya could walk together with the Zai mystical dragon and Emperor Shi mystical dragon. How could a person of this level not have some skills? Of course, Kong Shinmu could not guess it now. Moreover, Moya's identity would not affect Kong Shinmu's mission to kill the enemy deputy general. Therefore, Kong Shinmu did not think too much about it. After he asked Moya to communicate with the fortress, he started to prepare. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.